Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into prep classes, tutoring, entrepreneurship, and motivation. My guest today is Dr. Gordon Chiu. He is the owner of Dr. Wholesome's Academy, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me today.
So usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Well, my undergrad was done at Rensselaer Polytech.
Okay.
And after that, I got into Columbia and then went on to transferring that acceptance to Seton Hall University.
Wow.
And because I didn't want to drive across the bridge, the George Washington Bridge, I worked in the mornings at Mercks and Company. And then the evenings, I went to school. Oh. And Seton Hall was willing to give me basically classes that collided with each other. And I could still take them as long as I maintained a B average. And that was a great deal.
Great.
I knew I was going to get into medicine already. So the master's in chemistry was really just something in between that I really wanted to get in addition to my RPI undergrad, right, which was in chemistry, and then go on to medical school. Now, the medical school program was very unique. It was even more unique than the full scholarship at Seton Hall. It was a full scholarship and paid salary to go to medicine, MD, PhD program at multiple opportunities, places. I chose New York.
Wow.
Mount Sinai School of Medicine.
So,
I think I was entrepreneurial then, and it's some of the stuff I'm sharing with you is on the TED Talk, called Inventing Happiness. But basically, my background, when I go back into and I look at secrets of college planning, my big secret was that I really didn't study a lot when I was in high school. I didn't have to. I did really easily. Things came easily to me.
Sure.
So I became someone who didn't pay attention. And the perception and the attention, right then when you're being measured, you're not paying attention, that's like really crucial. That makes you non-competitive, I guess, in some people's sense. But other people, if they look at it, like what I see from now, that's actually a higher level of thinking, I think, I believe. So I was boxed in the corner. I got accepted to Rutgers in undergrad. I got accepted to Howard University. Back in the early 90s, Howard University. Now, as an Asian American born, and Temple and other ones, my parents would look at this in the church and the community, and they said, so you got into an all-black university. And I would joke about this and said, once you go black, you never go back, right? And I said, this will really make me stand out. And I wasn't accepted to Rensselaer initially. And it was at church that I opened the glass door for someone who was on the board of trustees. And he said, where are you attending school? I said, it's going to be either Howard or Rutgers. I haven't decided yet, but it was already June. And I sent in my application. He gave me a special form to Rensselaer Polytech. And I applied. I didn't write any essay. It's easy to say it now because they can't take it back from you, right? So I sent in my application and attended Rensselaer in September of 1992, right? So June 1992, I had nowhere to go. September of 1992, I was accepted to RPI, which today requires a 1520 at the high range. I speak to students who get in. It says 1470 if you go look it up in 2017 numbers, but everyone I speak to has got a 1520 or higher.
Wow.
So out of 1600. So I suddenly got upgraded in a serious way. Now, what happened from there was I swore that I would never leave any stone unturned. I am going to focus like you wouldn't believe. Now, what does that mean, right? When I went to Rensselaer, I didn't go in with a full scholarship. I was lightweight. I went in there, I'll fast forward, and I graduated summa cum laude, #1 in my class.
Wow.
Right? So what happened in between, right? First, it was the change in mindset. I'm never, ever, ever, ever going to leave any stone unturned. I'm going to change my mindset. Second is I am going to create a full scholarship. How do you create a full scholarship? Well, you work at a fraternity, you become their cook. So now your food and your expenses are paid, right? So then other things, right? What about like scholarships? I got an internship. I got no internships initially. I was a bio major, wanted to go into medicine. No internships for you, even with a 4.0 GPA.
Wow.
So biologists just don't have a lot of internships coming. So I switched my major. At the end of my first year, when summers came, couldn't get any position, switched my major to chemistry. And you know, the MCAT has more chemistry, by the way, than biology, so it wasn't a bad move. It was strategic, right? I started to really apply some strategy, and I got accepted into NASA with the grade point average I had to work on the origins of life. Layman speak, it is looking for aliens.
Wow.
Would you take it? I took it. So I was part of Dr. James Ferris's laboratory of origins of life, and followed by a whole slew of opportunities came after that. Howard Hughes came after that in my sophomore year. General Electric, other ones, new materials, inorganic chemistry, I did it all. And I also had a laboratory going on in the psych department where we were looking at how to block cocaine receptors.
Wow.
And so I had, I was cleared by the Department of DEA, right, Enforcement Agency, and Professor Larry Reed. He's Professor Emeritus still to this day, and we've become very close friends. We have a patent together. My path to generating patents began right at that moment, and I was able to put together a cash-flowing opportunity while I was at Rensselaer.
Wow.
All right, and then so Pfizer later on recruited me, gave me a place to stay in Connecticut. Where's Pfizer? It's located in Groton, Connecticut. It happens to be next to Mystic. So I had a place to stay in Mystic. I did research. They flew professors from places like Brown University, Harvard, other ones to educate me and school me differently in chemistry than what I got from Rensselaer.
Wow.
So I was completely repackaged, rebuilt, refined, right? And so by doing that, I got the attention of Merck, and that's how I came back to New Jersey. And Merck would pay for any employee to do their graduate studies.
Sure.
And the types of individuals at Merck were all mostly from Harvard or Columbia University. And I just realized that they're not paying for your time to cross the bridge. And that GWB to go to Columbia it's going to be during the traffic jam, right?
Sure.
It's really during the time when you don't want to be there. So I decided to make a move and see what would happen if Seton Hall would accept me, and of course with perks. And so I made my first deal with a university. Of course, you had to show them the interest from a school that they would like to be, right?
Sure.
And so later on, I started realizing that in life that's the case. When I went to Mount Sinai, I became dermatology fellow in my very first year at Mount Sinai because the dermatologists that were interviewing me wanted me also to do chemistry in the labs.
Wow.
While I was attending my MD and PhD program. So I realized very quickly that if you're willing to be used, which is also equal to be useful and helpful, right?
Sure.
The positive side of it, that there's always something that can be negotiated, and I am very willing to do that. So that allowed me to turn from someone who wasn't really on top of the game to someone who woke up earlier than others, slept later than others, and took naps in the afternoon. So I suddenly converted into doing gangbusters, really focusing and delivering. And as the publications started skyrocketing, later on, this whole thing with Mount Sinai, you see, I'm an American-born Chinese. Who are the two superpowers in the world now? United States and China.
Right.
So in China, they turned me into a mascot for skincare since I studied dermatology. They gave me a radio show, and I had about 3 million listeners on there.
Wow.
Once you have that kind of stuff, you can then have skincare opportunities, brands coming in and packaging. All you got to do is Google what happened about 20 years ago, and you kind of get to see that transformation in the chemistry and the cosmetics and all that. So that's all online. Well, when 2008 happened, I was all set. I was packaged and everything was good. I didn't even have to graduate from Mount Sinai. I had enough funds to transfer all of my credits over to University of Bridgeport.
Wow.
It was funded. So Whole Foods was coming up at the time, and so was Trader Joe's. And I'm talking about back in 2000, the year 2000, 1999. And they said, would you mind being the spokes doctor, speaking engagements, kind of like Dr. Oz, but for Asia, right?
Sure.
And could you talk about this? And could I build like a moat, right? A moat of protection around me. And I thought about transferring everything to Bridgeport, because then I could become a naturopathic doctor and talk about all the kinds of things like, for example, ketogenesis and diets on that. Or, what is your view about ketogenesis but with a soy-free diet? Well, it's very important because, if you don't add adaptogens, if you don't stay away from certain phytoestrogens, you could actually, depending on what phase you are as a female, cause premature aging and wrinkling and things like that that would not be desirable. Right? So that phrase which catalyzed Asia was, I'll tell you the ingredient that you should just all avoid that causes wrinkles. If you avoid the ingredient, you can reduce your wrinkling by over 50%.
Wow.
And that was what caught fire and went viral back in 2000. So transferring the Mount Sinai credits over, because I already taken all kinds of classes, 4 years there of classes between the MD and PhD, give or take, transferred over to Bridgeport gave me a fast track to being done, but also repackaged everything differently.
Sure.
So now you have a naturopathic doctorate with all kinds of chemistry background. I got the Sultan to be in Malaysia to be my patient.
Wow.
So it really transformed things, and I realized that, wow, the power of degrees, but mixing and matching, right? Taking one thing and combining it with another. Now, I also tutored on the side. When I was at Mount Sinai, being an MD, PhD, you could charge $1,000 an hour for tutoring. And people would come find you.
Wow.
The problem was I also had celebrities that were looking for me, including the well-known Demi Moore, right? So I was the spokes doctor for their brand under, connections through L'Oreal, Estee Lauder, Shu Uemura, other brands, all brands that you'd see in big malls and like Neiman Marcus and Bloomies and all that. So that took off. It gave me so much padding that when the world collapsed in 2008, I sent my resume into the one place I always wanted to get to. Because I positioned myself. I got into Harvard. I didn't go to Harvard. The HST program, I didn't go to that. I chose Manhattan because I wanted Wall Street to kind of fall in love with what I was able to do. And Wall Street never responded. I got 0 hits from Wall Street.
Wow.
So, but the years are important. From 2000 to 2007, there were no hits. And I had long left. But by 2008, the world collapsed. And I could get any position I wanted on Wall Street. I suddenly started writing articles for Wall Street, helping a company get funding. I was their interim chairman, and this company happened to have a spinach E. coli remover. That sounds great, right? Well, it's past the issue of spinach E. coli. So what I did was I repackaged them, sent it to NYU Stern and also NYU's medical school side, and had it looked at for effectiveness against viruses. Well, 2009 was the year when it happened, and it happened to be the year of the swine flu.
Wow.
And that allowed them to raise their valuation from $7 million to $180 million in 6 months.
Wow.
So whenever you position purpose, right? Curiosity is important, but along with passion, right? You got passion, but then if you have no purpose, you kind of fizzle out eventually.
Sure.
But if you can have purpose, right? Just like we align such a wonderful ingredient into women who then didn't want to have wrinkles, you could bring the valuation of products down and bring products up. So when I look at the secrets of college planning, I look at this and say, what does it have to do with me? I'm done with college, right? And I did all these degrees and ultimately, of course, 27 patents. How does this affect me? Well, I'm a father. And I share this in my TED Talk, Inventing Happiness, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not without the former insight of the cosmetics, the schooling, applying to all these things. And I can tell you, Anthony, I don't think I could repeat this myself, right? If I had to do it over again, because situations change. That was a different era back then. For my daughters, who I share openly on the TED Talk, I have no idea how to help them. I'm powerless, right? And aren't we all as parents, right? So I decided, of course I had some padding, right? I had some padding of that success, that roaring success. What happened to me other than on Wall Street with that one deal? Well, 7 deals later in Wall Street, I was successful with all 7 deals. Every one of them did well. Every one of them was recovered using science, innovation, curiosity initially, but then giving them purpose. Wow. And the final company, the big kahuna, was in something called graphene. I was a co-founder of a company called Graphoid, and this material, graphene, was the first 2-dimensional material known to humanity. It can basically, it's so thin, we named it being 2-dimensional. I'm talking about Nobel Prize laureates. Wow. And the world, called Earth, gave the graphene the Nobel Prize in physics. And so 2 inventors discovered that. I simply made one of the lowest cost processes to do it. I went to the top universities, Princeton. I actually went to Princeton to negotiate intellectual property, because I had an idea to discover something. They said no. I went to MIT, they said no. Then I went to China, because obviously we want to go to the best universities, right? And they said no. They liked what I had, but they said, we don't know yet. There's no risk on their part.
Sure.
I was raising the money, they're the institution, and they said, we don't know. So I go to China, the same thing happens. The 2 world superpowers said, we don't know. And this was Tsinghua University. So then I went to Singapore, and then they said, we know. We knew yesterday you were supposed to be here. So they armed me with a $100 million facility, and it took, I kid you not, 3 weeks. And the patent, which is now granted to make graphene using electricity from voltages as low as a 9-volt battery. Wow. The company that I formed went to a valuation of $250 million. Wow. I own 6% of it. Wow, so it was fantastic. It was fantastical. It was incredible. It's all Googleable, right? That's and of course Wikipedia you can be found. But then again, back to the point of being powerless, right? So I'm here, and I'm going up here, and but then what about my children? They start here, and they might actually end up going lower. So in 2016, when I had my second daughter, my first daughter, I took her to 11 countries, flew her around, and we stayed from hotel to hotel. Sounds so exciting, but it's such a sad story if she was now 10 years old and she's with dad and she has no friends and stuff like that. So my dream, Anthony, was to sell everything I had, restructure while I had time, because I already married and I'm in love, and I thought about when I was younger, if I found the right person, I would want to be with her all the time. So I wanted to build a different kind of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And so in 2017, I bit the bullet. In 2017, I went in and submitted my resume. You know, what's going to happen when you submit your resume? Well, most people are going to look at this and say, we can't hire you. You're not going to be happy. Now, where you submit the resume is really important. And it was a very humbling experience. I submitted my resume to public schools across New Jersey and didn't get hired by a single place. Now, how many schools would someone like me submit just to make sure it would actually work? I submitted my resume to over 100 places all over the state of New Jersey. Wow. Now, I wasn't willing, though, this is my fault, I wasn't willing to get a master's in education. Just wasn't going to do it. So I found out very quickly I wasn't qualified, or they weren't going to qualify me.
Sure.
But private schools were really excited to hire me. From Hawaii to New York, I got hired. And in the one instance, all you need is one transaction, right? I committed to a school, a private boarding school in Westchester in 2017, and rebranded everything for the love of my children. Now, here's a guy who's given the TED Talk on success of collaboration, graphene, right? Nobel Prize winning thing, company takes off. And he's your high school teacher. What do you think, right? So in Westchester, they said, if you were really successful, you wouldn't be my high school teacher. All right, that's what the kids thought. And you had to earn their trust, earn their respect. This is exactly the medicine I needed. I needed to be turned into a humble soul again. And at that moment, I learned to endure and to put kids' priorities as my priority. It's not about me, it's about them. And if you can fake it so that you take their issues and put it in your forefront, right? Yeah. And give yourself purpose, that is when, you know, new opportunities can come about. I made so little that year. I went below $12 an hour. I did everything. I passed out toilet paper. I was a house parent, so I also stayed up at night. I also counseled the student council presidents because I was there. I had nothing to do in 2017. So that same year, by the summer, I was already tutoring on the side again. Now, if you think about when did I start tutoring? I started tutoring in 1990, right? Then when I went to RPI, I tutored as well. So it's now 2019. So from 1990, 2000, 2010, one more year, and that's 30 years of tutoring, 29 years of tutoring. So I resorted to something I knew when I was really young. As a high school student, I tutored, and I could make more than I ever made tutoring. So what I did was I started tutoring to supplement teaching income over in Westchester, and pretty soon I had the tri-state area calling me to tutor them. Wow. Raising kids' scores. I share this on the TED Talk. I got tested by tutoring centers, and they found that I could get a 1600 on the SAT and a 36 on the ACT in half the time. So they said, now we just have to see if you can transfer the knowledge, and it worked. I became, some kids called me, and it's on the reviews there, they called me their fairy godfather. I said, I'm fine with being your fairy godfather. I don't need to go to Harvard again. I don't want to go to Mount Sinai again. I don't want to go to RPI again. What I want is I want friends for my daughters, and I also want in this process to discover how to properly plan for them. And what I've realized is it hasn't changed. The song the beat may be different, but it's still music. It is still, they still want individuals that are entrepreneurial, go-getters, thinkers, people who do great things for others. Well, that is the inventing happiness. So I came up with a formula, and I called it I3. It is integration. Like, you can't just be one-sided. You have to be integrated into many things. Just like I got integrated into Wall Street, I got integrated in chemistry, I got integrated in the Fortune 500 Merck. All that integration, but I'm still lopsided. I'm not integrated as a father. You got to complete the picture, right? So schools want integration, but they want to, like, they're limited. You've got a 17, 16, 15, 10-year-old, right? What are you going to see? So when I was at the national labs doing the graphene and all that got me into the national labs. I never asked my colleagues, where did they go to school? How did they get into the national lab? I got in. You don't go and ask someone, oh, I need your autograph, Demi Moore. You don't do that, right? Because I had my following and all. So I never asked. But once I got into education, in 2017, I started asking. Oh, we were recruited when we were in elementary school. What, the gifted program? No, it's not the gifted program. It is the gifted program. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the gifted program that public schools have set aside. It is separate. It's almost like going into the Olympics. When other kids can do 3 questions in math and you can do 25, you're getting a phone call. Right? And that's how a lot of this recruiting stuff happens, right? Is that they're looking, but they have limited insight. If they could see the great picture, they wouldn't miss, right? So I started getting really intrigued with your background as I kept tutoring. Today is December 18th, right? It happens to be my daughter's 5th birthday, so it gives them timeline into the TED Talk if people care to look, right? Inventing happiness. Well, we're here right outside of Princeton, and my daughter's getting a tour at Princeton today by a student that I helped, and made her more competitive. She now attends Princeton on full scholarship. So this kind of thing, right, where we help each other, it's very, very intriguing. And what intrigues me about your background is that you have 20 plus years or 25 plus years even, in college preparatory type things. How do you counsel someone to get into not Rensselaer or those types of things, but you have studied this dynamic, and I'm intrigued by it because you have studied it so that you can get them into the right fit.
Well, we're coming to the end of our show, and I usually ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents out there and the students? What advice do you want to give them that, they're going to college, they need preparatory classes, tutoring, motivation? What advice do you want to give them?
My advice is that you find the right fit, but you don't find the right fit right now. Like, I wanted to be a heart surgeon, brain surgeon, but then I wouldn't have any time to have afternoon tea, right? I wouldn't have an enjoyable, flexible life, right? I'm now in 10 million of real estate. Right? We don't have time to talk about that. But in 2 years after being a high school teacher, I then went on the acquisition binge of real estate, working for others while helping students figure out their test scores. 463 students tutored in 2 years, right? With over 60% scoring in the top 99 percentile. Now, that's a statistic that nobody can boast about. I can boast about that because it's real. It's not science fiction. Just like graphene isn't science fiction, these students turning them into these great individuals are not science fiction. But what did I do? I taught to the heart. I taught to the heart first, then moved the mind. Well, if you can find out what you want to have fit in your life in the future, so that as you grow into the fit, you find the right fit, like maybe Harvard's not right for you. Or maybe Marist is better for you. Be able to plan on what it is. What if I could tell you by going to Marist, you will find the love of your life? Well, wouldn't you prefer that over going to Harvard and being single forever, right? So who knows, right? But you can actually go and ask yourself that question. And it is in that coaching that I'm most intrigued about, because everything about Dr. Wholesome's Academy is built on love for my daughters. If I fail in any of this, at least I have a homeschool for them, right? So I'm intrigued about your knowledge on what it takes to finding that right fit.
Great. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.